What's going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris, and welcome to the Author's Lounge. I greatly appreciate everyone just taking the time out of their day to tune in to today's episode. Today I have a special guest, and I know I say that often about special guests, but each guest is a special guest. But this is going to be a fun one as well. I met this individual through X, and it came at a moment where I wasn't really using social media at all to do any sort of leveraging or promotions or marketing at all. So I was still learning the algorithms and the way that social media works even when it comes to networking. But our guest was just so kind and not only following me, but just having conversations back and forth, and eventually agreed to come on to this show. So, not to regurgitate information, but the purpose of this show is really to help educate our young readers and the young generation of writers on the come up. I like to bring guests onto the show who can provide their experience and their knowledge to be able to then help those that are in the younger generation category to really pose as an inspiration for them and know that this is what we can do. Also, I like to help authors themselves continue to brand themselves rather than just being authors who are selling a book. Because, people buy from people they like. And so, without further ado, let me go ahead and present to you our guest. I like to do a biography, and I got my wife's tablet, so I'm sorry. I couldn't use her phone. All right, so our guest has been building her multi-genre career since 2014, her first novel being the young adult dystopian book, Stone, An Outlier's Tale. Since then, she has gone on to publish several other works, and by several, we mean close to 20. Other works in the genres of young adult, superhero fiction, and children's books. An active blogger, book reviews, and educator within the book publishing world. Our guest continues to give back in a great way. In addition to this growing collection of work, she has made several appearances on the Lancaster Native Plant and Wildlife Festival. Lititz, did I say that right? Lititz? Lititz, there it is. Lititz Public Library Indie Author Event, Adamstown Elementary School Read Across America Day, You Grow Learning Center to share dandelions with young readers, and the Writing Community Chat Show, and has been featured in Lancaster Online with an extensive social media following at nearly 40,000 people across her social media platforms. And with her recent release reaching the #1 spot on Amazon's charts, there is no way she is slowing down. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you today's guest, Miss Kayla Hicks. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, other than dealing with my baby boy being sick, so my mind's kind of all over the place. So sorry about all that.
No, I totally understand.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. And I generally like to write down questions and then just ask it organically. So, because you're a multi-genre author, I don't normally meet many authors who write in a variety. So let's talk about the process of how you even got started. So I can imagine, right? Like your imagination is always on the go.
Right.
So 2014 is when you started professionally, but when did you actually start writing? Was that also 2014, or when did that begin?
I actually tried writing a young adult book when I was 16. Um,
Yeah.
at the time, I just read a lot. I didn't have a lot of access to books growing up, so I used my local library or my school library, and eventually got to the point where I wanted to try my own hand at it. And I admittedly wasn't very good at writing, and I showed it to an English teacher who believed in me, and he was like, I want you to run with this and go with it. And unfortunately, I don't know what happened to the copy of that book.
Oh
But I,
no.
I did finish it, but it was something like I didn't have a computer at home, so like I wrote it by hand.
Mhm.
So I don't, like I said, I don't remember how long it is, but I tried to give it another go in 2014 when I started. It took me 4 years to write my first book, mostly
Mhm.
because I just didn't have a lot of confidence in being able to finish something or get it out there. And then my husband kind of pushed me to try to publish it because he knew I wouldn't get myself going otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, and then after I wrote Stone, I kind of was worried because I spent $3,000 to publish it through a self-publishing company called Great Space, which is now owned by Amazon. And
Hmm.
I wasn't really, I kind of just jumped in because I should have done more research. I should have tried traditional publishing. I should have done this or that and everything, but I didn't. And I jumped in, was excited. I sold 250 copies, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to publish another book because I was like, I don't know if this is sustainable. And
Yeah.
then trying to grow my newsletter, um, I was really into superheroes at the time because Marvel was a big thing at that point.
Yeah. Yep.
And I
Yes, it
wanted,
was.
yeah, and I wanted to try my hand at it. And ideally, at the time, I didn't really find any other creative outlets or interest in anything else in young adult dystopian, which my first book was based in. So I just jumped into another one, and then it kind
Yeah.
of, I guess I caught the bug for it because I haven't
Mm.
stayed with one genre for very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Like it is something, right? When you think about the way that you start and how things kind of happen by accident, in many ways. And I did see too that you were into dystopian, and that I haven't actually like, read in the read books in that genre, but I think is a wonderful um, a wonderful part of a reader and an author to be able to not only have a love for one genre but for multiple. And then you mentioned superheroes, right? Marvel. I remember that time frame as
Yeah.
well, going in movie theaters and seeing all the Avengers and the Endgame and people clapping in the movie theaters
Yeah.
when Captain America grabbed that freaking hammer and Avengers Assemble and all that freaking crazy nerdy stuff that I love. But so traditional publishing, you gave some great insight on your website about querying letters and pretty much how the business works. But what made you? No, well, I don't want to assume, right? But have you tried going the traditional publishing route at any point in your career?
Yes, actually. I almost got the chance to be traditionally published 3 times. So I actually got a deal for my book anywhere else,
Hmm.
but unfortunately, it just things didn't align. I always encourage authors when you're reading contracts to double check everything. I
Yes.
mean, I'm not someone who can afford high fancy lawyer. I use LegalZoom, which is affordable, it's easy to access, it's quick to
Hmm.
do, which I think a lot of authors should keep in their back pocket and remember.
Yeah.
And looking over it, my husband was like, okay, so this company says they're based out of Japan. So if something happens where things wouldn't work out for whatever reason, not saying like I want to anticipate something bad happening, you would have to go to Japan to be like, this is my book and I had to fight for the rights of my book. And so I
Yep.
just questioned that because I was like, you have a US office, but you say you're based in Japan. Like, could we sign a contract with your US office? Because it just makes more sense. I'm based in the US. And unfortunately, they backed out after I questioned things. And then I had another deal, well, that I was working through for Dandelion that's actually in a small publisher that actually like lives like right down the street from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the middle of negotiating the contract, they ghosted me. I just never heard from them again. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I actually know the person that runs that publishing place because I actually taught her kid because I was a preschool teacher for 9 years.
You're about to go knock on their door, like, "What's up?"
Uh, we ran into each other in public, and she just acted like nothing happened. She was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was like, "Okay." So
Okay.
I just I've gone through that route. It was a dream of mine for so long, but
Hmm.
honestly, looking over some of the contracts and things, I mean, yes, they offer great opportunities, and it can be a really great route for people. I don't want to like sit here and tear it down because
Right.
it's been something that has been I would say a pillar in the publishing industry for as long as books have been around. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, authors don't get a fair shake, I feel like, in many cases, because
Right.
even though you have the publisher backing you, you oftentimes are still doing the same amount of marketing. You're still
Yep.
required to have a large audience because they're pouring a lot of money into you and you need to do a lot on your own still. And
Absolutely.
so I kind of, after trying this a few times, I figured maybe I just stick with self publishing. I just keep learning, keep trying, keep growing. And I seem to be doing okay on my own. So
Right.
why try the traditional route? Because it hasn't worked out for me so far.
Right. And maybe it was aligned that way for you because you're absolutely right. And just for those who are watching, who aren't necessarily certain of which route to go, you really just need to know really, what do you want? Do you really want to have creative control and the rights to your material without having to go through the legalities of trying to get your books back if things don't work out? Or look, there's a laundry list that I'm not going to go through right now. That's Pandora's box being opened up. But the short end of the story, Kayla's right, absolutely right about you need to read the fine print on these contracts or any of these deals that you're making. And also, in addition to her being right, she's also correct in the marketing aspect. Just because you're traditionally published, it doesn't mean that you're not doing the work. You still need to put in the work. And a lot of times, not especially in today's day and age, a lot of people who get these deals generally are celebrities or influencers or people who have a massive following, because at the end of the day it is a business.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever they can put their face on the cover of their social media page or their website to be able to drive in revenue, that's who they're going to promote. And if it's an author who is new into the game or a newly published author that happens to be traditionally published, you may not get the same marketing opportunities that these other ones have. You have to do it yourself, and that is no different than in the world of self-publishing, where you're still in control of the marketing. So you have to do it on your own. And really, I think the biggest thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things I've learned with traditionally published authors versus self-published authors is the fact that traditionally published, you're opened up to a wider pool of potential readers, whereas in the self-publishing world, you have to build your way up to that point. Would you agree with that? And if
I
so, what are your thoughts?
I would. I actually know a few authors that are also traditionally published,
Hmm.
and I know one that's a romance writer, and she was also saying how like they do a lot of more networking type of things, where
Hmm.
like she published a book, and then they invited her to. She's based in the UK, I believe, so they invited her to London, and they had like a whole networking event between all the romance authors or all the authors that were under the traditional publisher, and
Yeah.
they like exchange things. So I do think it opens more doors for you, in a sense that they have more connections, and it does open more readers because there are some readers that are loyal to a publishing house. Like,
Yep.
someone who reads Penguin books is like, I always am satisfied when I read a Penguin book, and that's who they tend to buy from.
That's a good point too. Now, on that point, right, when it comes to that, what are your thoughts on libraries? Are you an author who partners with libraries, or do you believe in the independent bookstores or the small bookstores? Do you partner with them, or do you just focus on just the mainstream bookstores like Barnes and Noble or Books a Million? What are your thoughts on that?
So, this is a question I actually get asked a lot. I have worked with libraries in my area, and I have also worked with independent bookstores. And I tried to get into like BAM and Barnes and Noble, but the problem with the big box bookstores was that you need to be able to do wholesale, which I can't do because I do
Yep.
Amazon's KDB, which is print to order.
Yep.
So that kind of closed that door for me because if I can't offer wholesale, then they're not going to want me. And even
Right.
when I tried to contact the store to like talk to the manager, they were like, "Oh, you have to go up the chain and you have to go to corporate to start filing your process, see if you can get in." And I was like, "Oh, well,
Hmm.
that kind of stinks." So I have probably 6 or 7 independent bookstores that have been in my that are in my area that I've partnered.
Yeah.
Well, I've talked to or partnered with in some way, and one of them I worked with was more niche. I had my book Anywhere Else in there,
Hmm.
and I kept in there for 2 months, and then they were like, "Well, it's not really selling," so I pulled it out. And then when I actually was going to take Dandelion over there, they had a 20% stocking fee, which I get, like, terms change and things, but it just didn't seem
Right.
worth it to me. I want to help
Yeah.
the little guy, but I'm also the little guy. So unfortunately, like, we have to weigh our pros and cons.
No, for sure.
And as far as libraries go, I actually read this really interesting article in Medium the other day that came from a librarian who
Yeah.
said, like, if you're an indie author, please think about these things before you approach us. And it was, do you have a good cover? Can you offer us hardcover? And like, do you really think you're actually going to get an audience if you come and do a reading for us? And it was really it was interesting to think about because
Hmm.
in my area, I live in Lancaster. and the Effort Library, they haven't been as open to taking indie authors, and I think it's because of what that like those aspects that the librarian pointed out. But
Hmm.
somewhere like the Lidditz Library, they host local author events. They've been doing it for the past 3 years.
Hmm.
They invite all of us out. I think I was part of a thing that had 20 like local authors, and they invited a local bookstore called Aaron's Books, and they sold some of the books there for authors that have books in their store, so they could sell it
Hmm.
through this independent bookstore, which was great. So I feel like you kind of have to find the right library that's willing to
Yep.
work. Like out of all my books, I only have one book in the Lancaster Public Library system, and that's because of the Lidditz Library, and that's
Yeah.
Dandelion. So I pretty much just replied to the library, and I'm like, okay, well, I get your concerns, but unfortunately for indie authors, hardcovers aren't really a viable option for us right now because like
Hmm.
Amazon, I know, I mean, I usually typically use Amazon. I haven't really branched out to other platforms, but Amazon recently in the past 2 years introduced hardcovers, and even for hardcovers, you have to reach a certain page count. I tried
Yep.
to make Dandelion, my children's books, into hardcovers, and you have to have a 75 page minimum.
75. Yep.
So I said, like, we're trying, but unfortunately, we're limited in some of our options right now. So,
No, for sure, for sure. I'd have to put you on. Like introduce you to. I don't remember his name, but it's called Print Nation.
okay.
If you decide to do let's say like author events,
Hmm.
because this website they offer like a variety of formats, and they're not a print on demand company. They you give them your material, and they can formulate it in however you want it to be formatted. Since you're not partnered like with Barnes and Noble
Right.
or with the or like Ingram Sparks or things like that, they are a great substitute. In fact, I went to them just for a simple coloring book that I didn't put onto the market. I put it only on Amazon. I didn't go through Barnes and Noble or anything like that. But
Hmm.
it's great, and they offer foiling so you can get the color to pop, especially because you do children's books. Well, I mean titles in general that pop when foil look good regardless of what genre. But in particular, children's books tend to have that a lot more. I've noticed. But I'll give you that information afterwards. I'll shoot
Yeah,
it
I
to you in the
appreciate that.
email. Yeah. Okay. So that is unfortunate, though, to hear in regards to just the politics sometimes behind some of whether it's a bookstore or a library, but in particular with libraries, because you would some libraries like the one over here in Seattle or even the one in San Francisco, there was a process that they wanted to go through. I'm like, you can't tell me you have like 40,000 books in there. You're telling me every day somebody's getting all 40,000 of those books, but I can't
Right.
get my one book into your catalog. I don't know about that. So hearing your story kind of makes me think in that same thought, like, come on now. But everything worked out. You were able to get into Lidditz Library, and so fortunately enough, there are businesses out there that do support it, and so it's just one of those kind of get in where you fit in type of an ordeal. Now, with that being said, because you have a variety of genres that you write in, this one I really am curious on your answer. How do you market your books per genre? Like, what is your overall marketing, if you would like to share? And
Yeah.
okay, yeah, what is your strategy for like for the genres? I'll leave it open the floor for you.
Um, so obviously, different genres require different marketing techniques.
Mhm.
So for my children's books in particular, I started writing them because I have a 7-year-old daughter, and when I started writing them, she was like 3 or 4, and
Yeah.
I was a preschool teacher for 9.5 years. So I was already exposed to a lot of books. I was with children, seeing what their reactions were to books, and from a teacher standpoint, I kind of knew I wanted to make a book that was teachable, that they could use as
Mhm.
a teachable tool. So I started creating books. I now have 3 children's picture books, and for each of them, I create learning kits. So
Yeah.
it comes with like a sheet that has lesson plan ideas or things to put. So in preschool classrooms, not many people know they have centers. So there's like a science center, a writing center, a dramatic play center where like they have house dress up stuff. So on that lesson plan sheet, I also add what they can incorporate into each of these centers to link to the book. Like for Dandelion, maybe they make a flower shop, or maybe
Mhm.
they, have words they write at the writing center, stuff like that. I also include games. I also include coloring sheets. I also
Yeah.
include a take-home activity, and I package it all together. And for my children's books, I know for Dandelion in particular, I put together like 11 or 12 kits, and I went and
Mhm.
delivered them to daycare centers for free in my area with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
book. And a lot of them asked me to come out and then present it and do like pop from classroom to classroom and read it and do activities. And I pretty much did the same thing for Today I'm Not Laurel and the day the gnomes moved in. I made a learning kit and I make it online for free. There's a website called Teacher Pay Teacher where teachers or
hmm
parents can download free activities, or there's some paid activities on there. I make all of mine for free that they can just print off and use at their own disposal. And I put
yeah,
that link at the back of my book. So I'm like, hey, this is also a teaching tool. This is something you can do at home or in the classroom. As far as my young adult books, that's been a lot trickier.
yeah.
My main platform is X. It's just where I feel comfortable. It's where I've taken off. I'm currently working at being more comfortable in front of the camera. So TikTok or Instagram is not really my jam. But I'm trying. So
Yeah.
I literally have been doing a lot of research on how to make more eye-catching images, on what keywords I could use, because my young adult audience, I mean, young adult doesn't necessarily mean teens.
Right.
It spans to a ton of different age ranges. I still read young adult, which is also why I write in young adult.
Me too.
So, right. So, I mean, they're just really interesting stories because we can all relate to someone finding themselves and then having to be thrust in these situations. It just adds an element of something more interesting. So
Right.
they can give us more exciting stories at the time, and they range to be so like across the genres.
hmm
So just trying to make more eye-catching images and things for where young people are, which is like TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
has
Yep.
been a
Yep.
challenge challenge for me. But I know like for some of my young adult books for Anywhere Else and Secrets Never Told, I actually connected with a teacher on TikTok who is in Canada, and she was like, my school doesn't have a library. So I'm
Mm.
asking indie authors if they could send me books, like for my classroom library. She's like, I can't
Yeah.
promise that you're going to make a sale. I can't promise that, I can market it for you. She's like, but
Right.
I can promise that it's going to get into the hands of your audience. So
Right. Yeah.
it was really nice. I sent her two of the copies. She put them in the library, and each book she got, she posted on TikTok and like showcased it and talked about with her class. And her class like did a poll to say like what they liked about each book. So like it was really nice to see, and I hope more teachers can do that. And I've had teachers reach out and say, hey, I actually put this in my classroom library for Anywhere Else because it deals with like alcoholism and toxic families and
hmm
homelessness and stuff like that. So I think definitely like just trying to, when I think about marketing, people need to think outside the box. It's not
Exactly.
necessarily running ads all the time. It's not necessarily posting buy my book 5 million times on social media. It
Yeah.
also is what in your community can you do? Like how can you think outside the
hmm
box? Like if I wrote a book about trains, there is a museum near me called Stroudsburg Railroad,
hmm
which it's like one of the I think one of the most famous or something railroad stations that still exists, and they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
museums and stuff. So could I go to the museum shop and ask them if they'd be interested in carrying my book in there?
hmm
It's thinking about how your book relates to whatever topics it does or people that it does
Yep.
and seeing if you compare with them. And that I think is going to go further in marketing than people realize.
Oh, that's a golden nugget right there. That's a golden nugget. Absolutely. Thinking outside the box. I've seen it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad I got you on the show because just in seeing what you write about in your blogs, I'm like, oh, she is educated in this business. Not even just in the business, but just educated altogether.
No.
But in particular, oh yeah, no, of course, but like in particular with the business, um, you have knowledge about how to be able to get yourself out there, and you could take so many different avenues. Like it doesn't even matter the fact that that we had mentioned the thing about awards. Not everybody needs awards, but everybody needs a strategy to be able to market. Some people just haven't been fortunate enough to do it. By the way, I believe that as soon as you promote you put yourself on for one of those books for an award, it's going to happen. Yeah, it's just a matter of whatever one that you decide to put on there, and then go. Especially with your last one. And before I even let you go, I am going to have you talk about your latest book,
Oh,
which
okay.
reached the number one tops the number one spot on Amazon's on the charts. I saw that this morning, so congratulations to
Thank
you on
you.
that. But yeah, of course. But to kind of get back where you're saying, if you're writing a book on trains and you happen to have, and then that spot you were talking about the railroads museum. area, and being able to potentially make a partnership with them that is absolutely thinking outside the box. To caveat off of that, I think, for example, when it comes to being a children's book author, and I am as well, so I can relate to you on that. You were a teacher. Are you still a teacher or not anymore?
No, once COVID hit, I ended up staying home with my daughter. So now I stay
Okay.
at home and I write.
Oh, okay, okay. But to be fair, like once you when you were teaching, you had some of the ins and outs, and you knew how it worked. So being a children's book author, well, writing children's books as you do, you know that, Mom, I know my audience could potentially lie in the schools. That no, in elementary schools, that wouldn't be the same case for like a horror book
Yeah.
for for young adults. But then you think, okay, what time of the year can I market this book, and how can I do it, and how creative can I be? And I've seen it to where authors really rely heavily on just, this is my book, go and buy it. I've seen it on Threads, I've seen it on Instagram and on TikTok and on X and on the internet. It's just, here's my book, it came out this day, buy it. And there's no substance as to why it should be bought. And that's really the point as to what I would like to convey to people who come on board is, if you brand yourself in a way, you don't necessarily have to, I mean, you still would need to market your book, but you
Right.
wouldn't necessarily need to try to sell people on the idea of, you should buy my book. If they know who you are and then they like who you are as a person, they'll buy it regardless. So you can just say, "Hey, I released a book about broccoli. It's coming out in 2 weeks, and this is why you should buy it." People will
Right.
buy it because it's your face, and they like who Kayla Hicks is. You know what I mean? So, but I do agree with you on thinking outside of the box. So I'll give you just a couple more questions before I let you go. So, um, what? So let's talk about your book, the one that just came out, right? I don't want to get it wrong. The Escape Room,
Escape City.
Escape City. Sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm thinking of the Escape Room. Sorry, the Escape City. Oh my goodness, my brain is fried. I'm so sorry, my kids, man. But okay, the Escape City recently reached #1 on Amazon. How did you do that?
That's a good question.
Oh,
That's a great question. I was honestly surprised to see it myself. So I've for this book, I've actually experimented with ads. So I did a lot of research on what keywords I would need, how to run a Facebook ad, and how to run a Google ad. It's something I've never done before. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm successful right off the bat. I've learned quite a lot. My husband is helping me figure it out because personally I'm scared to run ads because there's so many people that until like you figure it out, you have to do so much testing and so much trial and error that you could potentially sink so much money into ads without gaining anything from it. So I mean, I feel like it's definitely been a learning curve. If anything, I would say it's probably mostly because so many people have viewed my book at this point.
yeah.
I actually tracked the link on BookLinker, and I think so far my book has had like, on that link alone, has had like 550 clicks, and my book came out last Friday. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but this has been, besides Dandelion, my most successful book this far, because Dandelion, I
Awesome.
sold 450 copies of that.
Mhm.
So my guess is just exposure is how I got that far. But it was a nice surprise.
That's awesome. That's a huge congrats. Like,
Thank you.
like the magnitude, right, of reaching #1. You have 18 books. Is this your first #1, or was Dandelion the #1 as well?
No, actually, I reached #1 in teen death, and I think it was like, I can't remember the other category for it, with my book Secrets Never Told, because it focuses
Mhm.
on a girl who loses her parents in a car accident.
Okay.
And that was like the only one that's ever reached the top of the charts. Dandelion
Okay.
actually never reached the top of the charts for anything. It was just I had sold a lot of copies.
I see.
So yeah, I was
Hey,
surprised.
congrats. So there's the ratio. So like a 2 to 18 ratio.
Yeah.
Like, hey, for every 18 books you make, you'll at least two of them are going to reach #1.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but hey, congrats on that. What I was getting at is, not many people achieve that milestone. So that kind of goes to my point earlier about, not not every author needs an award to still find some sort of success. It really does. I won't even say luck of the draw, because I think that would be somewhat debilitating to the stamina that you've had in being in the book business. I would say though, it's been a lot of trial and error. being able to experiment and you going about it in the self-publishing route versus the traditionally published process that you attempted, it seems to have done you very well.
Yeah, and actually do agree some of what you say about luck. I do think luck does play a big role in it because sometimes it's just the right audience that sees you at the right time, or
Right.
because you're, like something that you trying to target something that's trending, you hit it at the right time. It could be luck that gives
Oh
you
yeah.
that boost that you need. But yeah, definitely trial and error and just, pursuing what you want is definitely big factors as well.
Oh yes. Oh, you mentioned too. That actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a great point as well. Yeah. So I'll retract that. I would say a little bit of luck as well, but definitely a lot of preparation and a lot of experience. I think coming out the gate, being like a first time author for anybody who's expecting that to happen and they don't have any of the experience, might be in for a surprise if that's like a thought of I'm going to be number one, which I think it's great to shoot for that. But I think it's just more important to focus on the journey and focus on how to build an audience and get better. X, would also agree. X was for me. It was surprising to see the amount of activity that authors have on that platform. When I was starting, my wife she built my Instagram for me, and I focused more on okay, how can I attract the audience? But I wasn't really gelling with it as well. But X is just popped off and skyrocketed, and then now I met you and many other authors. So okay, so Escape City. Let's talk a little bit about that. I know we're kind of going over the 30-minute mark, but that's fine. So, let's talk about the Escape City really quick. Can you break down what that book is about and why people should get their hands on it?
So, I really enjoy my family is big board game enthusiasts, and something that we have kind of got into is like escape room cities that or escape room city. There I am. Escape rooms that kind of are contained in a board game that you can play
Yeah.
once, and if I keep everything nice, I just pass it on to someone else in their family who might enjoy it. And my daughter, they have kid escape rooms near us, which is kind of cool. So we're really into escape rooms. And then obviously I love amusement parks, and my
Mhm.
favorite horror thing is a zombie. So I just think they're a complicated monster, which sounds silly, but really, if someone close to you turns into a zombie, how can you realistically try to fend yourself off from them when all you can see is all the memories you have with that person? So I think they're more complicated than people give them credit for. Um, and then I kind of saw that there was I would say, kind of a gap in the young adult genres for zombies to actually appear. So knowing that going in, I knew I had to keep it not as horrific and gory as
Yeah,
zombie things can go into. So
for sure.
the main story is about there are 5 teen influencers, Noah, Naya, Josie, Rue, and Jackson. And Noah's dad owns Bronston's Family Amusement Parks, and he is creating a new attraction in Las Vegas where it's going to be a city, like a small city scale amusement park that's kind of contained. It's going to have escape room style riddles and puzzles and state of the art animatronic zombies. Now, these zombies are not supposed to touch you. They might grab at you, bite at you,
Yeah.
or chase after you, but each person that goes into Escape City is essentially equipped with like a laser gun, like you'd play with a laser tag, but it looks more like a weapon. And
Yeah.
they have tons of sensors all over them, so when you
Mhm.
shoot at them, it freezes them. However, as they get into the game, they find out that something has happened to the zombies and they've become deadly. As they start to find dead park employees, and they find out that the zombies will come after them and will harm them. So there are several safe houses throughout the city they have to make it to, but they have 3 days to make it to the heart of the heart building in the center of the city for
Yeah.
extraction, because their mission is they're survivors trying to escape city. But they find out that they're more valuable than they realize because Noah's dad is using their audiences as influencers to promote the park. So they are technically VIP employees, but really they want to make it so that they can give a positive review of the park and get more money.
Yeah.
So,
That sounds so fun. I bet you had a good time writing the book.
yes, it was a ton of fun. And definitely much harder than I thought to create the puzzles and the riddles and try to keep the book going because it's not a
Yeah.
genre that I've done before, which is horror thriller. Definitely leaving a lot of cliffhangers and trying to keep the reader reading, which was a
Yeah.
challenge.
So how long did it take you to write The Escape City?
Um, I would say 6 to 8 months.
Oh, so it was definitely a process.
Yes.
For sure. I'm sure a lot happened within that 6 to 8 months in your action, outside of the world you created.
Yes, yes, most definitely. And making sure that I had a lot of alpha and beta readers read through it and give me feedback. So the feedback I got was like, you said they have to get to know the city, but you don't give a reason why. So I had to give them a reason why. I'm like, well, why not make it a mission that they are survivors that need to escape the city, and that
Yeah.
the last military thing is going out before they bomb the city to make sure these things don't
Yeah.
escape.
Now,
So
how important is it to have an advanced reader team, in
very
your opinion?
very
Yeah.
important. Something I actually learned, which I didn't know before, is alpha readers are technically the readers you want who give you grammatical and developmental
Hmm.
feedback in the beginning, and beta readers are actually the people who get the most polished version of the book and just give you developmental feedback.
Yes.
And a lot of people I say that to, and they're like, "What's an alpha reader? I have no idea." And I'm like, "I didn't either. I had no idea."
Yeah. You just gave me a thumbnail for the YouTube piece. What is an alpha reader? That's
Exactly.
that's great. Goes to the point where I'm saying, hey, he's like she's an educator in this as well. Been educated. So okay, so I think these are a really good nugget. So the last big question, and I know this answer, but where can people find you?
Pretty much everywhere. So on
Yeah.
all of my social media bios, I have a link tree, which literally gives you everywhere that I am. I have a website. I'm on X. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Blue Sky. Trying Snapchat because that's where all the kids are. Um, and I'm pretty much everywhere that you can be, or at least trying to be. But I don't want to spread myself too thin. But my main things are
Yes.
probably X, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Good. So pretty much knowing where your audience lies and going to where they are and connecting with your readers. Good. Now as far as everything goes, your website. What is your website?
It's KaylaHicks.com, but there's a dash between Kayla Hicks, the Kayla and Hicks. And I have on there my blog, my books. I have my ARC reader sign up. I have a media kit. And I think I also have I have a course that teaches people on how to start their publishing journey that goes through traditional and self-publishing.
That's awesome. Yep. And for those who kind of don't know where to go, I'll have all of her links in the description. Well, I'll have her website and I'll have her link tree in there, and you all feel free to do as you wish. But it's well worth it, and especially just read through her blogs at the very least. There's so much knowledge in there, or it's fun reads, and it's well organized, and how she has it through her website and how her husband helped her out. So it's a great team dynamic that you have over there, and with your family. So hey, thank you so much for coming on board, Kayla, and thank your husband too for letting me have you on the show for a little bit of time, and hope everything's going well with your family and your daughter.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, hey everyone, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to tune into today's episode. Kayla Hicks was awesome. This was great, and I hope everyone pulls some knowledge from it. Don't forget to go check out her, and don't forget to click on the links that I have in the description. Check her out. Continue to support the movement, and you all have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.